Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles, one of the directors at B Squared and the host of the Sencast, the podcast for special educational needs. Each week we talk about a different topic within the world of special educational needs to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals working in schools and to empower parents. In this episode we're talking about parenting foster or adopted children. I'll be discussing this with one of my regular guests, Alison Knowles. Ali is an emotional therapist and founder of the Ollie model, and she supports emotional resilience in children and young people. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. We are the assessment people. We help to show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. And we do this for a wide range of abilities and ages. Do you know about our Autism Progress, our framework for helping profile a pupil's autism and how it impacts them? It's based on CERT and looks at communication, social interaction, emotional regulation, and flexible thinking. And Autism Progress also includes a wide range of strategies to help support the pupils. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software. Now, on with the podcast. In this week's show, we're discussing parenting foster or adopted children. Joining me today is Alison Knowles. She's one of our regular guests, and she is the creator of the Ollie model, the author of the series Ollie and his Superpower books, trainer of the Ollie coaches, and an emotional therapist. I had to squeeze it Ollie in. I almost said Wally as well, which would have been really wrong.
And emotionally fair, yeah.
Welcome back, Ali. It's always fun.
Do you know what I like? I'm an unconventional therapist in that, I don't not follow set rules. That's not fair. Of course I do to a point, but you allow me to be me. And I think our therapy is about allowing people to be people. So I always enjoy these.
People ask me who's my favorite guest, and I can't really tell because each person is different.
Yeah.
Yeah, no one else podcasts like Ali. No one else podcasts like Finton. No one in the world podcasts like Susie Nyman. So it's not a favourite. That each one are really, really different and interesting. And I'm hoping that each person, it really shows who they are. With all my guests, that's my job. Is you people need to see you and hear from you. That's the whole point.
I think you should test yourself and have all three of us on at the same time. That would be highly amusing.
That would be carnage.
It would.
Okay, so parenting foster and adopted children. Normally I have a little anecdote I say or something to show that I have some knowledge or experience. And on this one, I've got nothing. Because most families, you have children and life is quite sensible and normal. But fostering and adoption is completely different. My only experience of anything like this, I'm not even going to say I know someone, because that isn't an experience either. That's just, I've heard some tell me some information. My own experience is I remember being at a park with my daughter when she was younger, and there was a child of a similar age, and we were both getting back to the car at the same time, and they were sitting in the front seat, and who I perceived their dad to be, because I'm very stereotypical and make these normal assumptions like everyone else does. And he just said, no, you're never going back there again. You're safe now. Let's go buy you some Lego. And you just sat there and just went, what happened for that? Oh, life this. And another one is just hearing a woman walking through a shop on her phone going, yep, she's arriving in an hour. She's got nothing with her. I need to get everything. I don't know anything about her yet, but I've got an hour. And it's just hearing those sorts of things of just thinking about the adults are just thrown in, but the children. And that, in reality, again, not knowing anything,
they're thrown into.
But that is the better option than where they've come from, in theory.
That's a podcast on its own. First and foremost, I like your opener, you're no expert, nor am I, right? But I don't profess to be an expert on any of the things that I deal with in therapy, because I don't think you can be. Because as you know, every client is unique. Their stories are unique. So how the hell can I be an expert? All I can see sort of common things. I can see common things that crop up all the time. I can identify things as, that's attachment, that's trauma. That I can do that. So that I know. But do I know anything about foster and adoption? No more than I know about anything else I'm talking about. But what I do and the approach that we take is to take it away from the label, take it away from the story, because we can't change the past, unfortunately, and work with where we're at now and what's going on now for this individual as they are now. And what would need to change, not for me to feel I've done a good job, but for them to be in a better place. And I think that's really important, because I think as professionals, we don't get into this because we're bored. We get into it because we want to make someone's world better. And I think it's a very fine line between what we presume is making their world better and what they might presume. So, for example, you said about the woman, this child's got nothing. They're in a better place. You and I know that, or we presume that, because they're not being beaten, abused, or crashed as what else has happened, although it's not always that traumatic. But for the child, if that's all they know, are they in a better place? It's a difficult one. And I think it's really important, whatever you're working with, not to presume that we can possibly understand what is better for this child and what is not. Yes, it's better they have clean clothes and regular food. That's a given, yeah. But emotionally, what's better for them? That's our judgment based on our life experience. So you have to tread very, very carefully on that one, I think.
I was just thinking that I completely assumed that every child going into foster and adoption has to have had a horrible negative thing happen for that to happen.
Well, they
But I
kind
just
of
think
have. They're not with their biological parents. That's probably the one thing we can agree on. But then you argue that's a good thing sometimes. Is it? I don't know.
But you could actually have a situation where a couple drop their kid off at school, go to the shops, get hit by a bus and die. The police find out who they are, can't find any living relative. They would then go into foster. That child would get picked up from school, and in some ways they haven't witnessed or been part of, but that information has just dropped on when their complete life has changed.
Still trauma. It doesn't matter if it's an instantaneous trauma or it's an ongoing trauma, it's still trauma. So in that respect, that is a common goal. Something dramatic has changed. Who wants to be away from their biological parents? Ideally, we want them to be perfect and live in a nice rose-coloured cottage and live happy ever after. But we're talking about kids from a young age that have never known anything else. But, we also have kids that are struggling with your teenager. You can't cope anymore. They need to go somewhere else, per se. And it's just as traumatic. So I think every story is so unique. It's really important that we don't look to a book or a manual, but that we look to what is it this child needs, not what do we think they need, other than the practicalities of food, clothes, safe. Obviously, that's a given. But emotionally, what do they need?
And I think that emotionally, because so much, and just reading stuff recently, we always take an outward appearance of they're fine. And that's the thing, if they appear fine on the outside, they must be fine on the inside. And I'm seeing that a lot, and it's kind of going, yeah, we don't know what's going on the inside. We really don't.
But that's a lovely way to think. And I think what we need to be careful of is we don't then fall into the opposite trap of, oh, well, they must be feeling immense trauma. They must be feeling neglect. They must be feeling attachment issues. They must be feeling. There's a potential. In my world, and again, I can only ever relate it back because I can only talk in any kind of this is real about me because I can't say it about anyone else, is when I'm in my therapy room, I have fishing rods. And what I mean by that is I have in my head all these things this could possibly be because I'm human and my brain's just going to fill in the gaps of what's happening in front of me. But I don't know which one's real and I don't presume, or I try damn hard not to. So I test each of those fishing rods so that I don't get it wrong. I don't get lost in the story or lost in, well, the book says it must definitely be this, even if they don't realize it is. And it's really important to keep an open mind as a therapist. But when, any parenting, but probably more so foster and adoption, you are the therapist. You are the one that's going to have to spend the time and work that out. Yes, they've probably got a professional working with you as well, but ultimately you're there 24/7. So you are the therapist, and it's really important that you don't, as what I call, get lost in the story, which is lose sight of little Adam's little Adam. No, little Adam is the little boy who's traumatized because mummy and daddy were drug dealers or whatever. That's his story. That's his past. You need to be aware of it because obviously it's had an effect. It's not who he is. And I think it's really important that you hang on to who he is and that we can't change the past, but we need to know what behaviours, what beliefs he's put in place to help him cope with that past, because we all do that all the time, and how we can give him options and choices now and make him feel that that part of his brain that created those behaviours or those beliefs only did so to protect him. It's not going to give them up easily. So saying you're safe isn't necessarily going to cut it, because the brain will go, well, what I was before. No, I'm going to keep doing this because it works. And it's recognizing those things. And you have to be the therapist. And I think the one thing I really love about the work, and we do an awful lot with foster adoption, I'm so grateful. It's probably the work I enjoy the most, is the parents will bring the child, or if they're still in foster and going through the system, then an agency or local county council will submit a child. But it's the parents that need the help, because we were talking in a previous podcast about backing yourself in your gut instinct. If you've got a child, your child, biologically born, everything's fairly okay, apart from maybe they're not doing so good at maths, you're going to doubt yourself or whatever. But you don't know anything about this one. I mean, you're proper dumped in the deep end, and all you can do is trust professionals. And, well, he will definitely have this, and this. He may well. That's not who he is.
I think you were saying before we started recording, like, you could go read a book on trauma. You could go read a book on attachment. You can go read all these books. It will tell you nothing in reality for this child.
They'll give you some good overview and information, but it's general information. It's not going to be specific to that child.
And you might get the full backstory of everything that happened and how long it's gone on for and what that child and the life, and you're going, oh my God. But you're viewing that through an adult's eyes. So the other thing is, in reality, yes, this child has been in this situation, but you have no idea how much they've been aware, how much they've been protected, how much they've been neglected, their perception of everything, them understanding what any of it actually means. And so, yeah, to me, it's really important not to just read that thing and go, okay, here's a list of 10 things that's going to be wrong with them because of that. I know that now because that's definitely a list. I've read that. To what am I seeing?
Yeah. And and again, from a previous podcast, it's absolutely perfect and okay and normal to look externally to get information, but then take that information and make your own judgment with what's going on in front of you.
I think in lots of ways you can talk about triangulation.
Yeah.
This is what the experts tell me, blah. This is what the child's telling me. They don't line up. And I remember one of your previous stories was about a boy whose granddad died.
Yeah.
And he was really sad. And the assumption was he's missing his granddad. But actually what he was sad about is his granddad took him to football, and because his granddad's not there, he can't go to football. So what you think is wrong, and what actually that child was upset with was completely different. So we just can't go in with those assumptions.
No, that's my fishing rods. But, sensible me would think, well, absolutely, he's missing his granddad, he's grieving. Granddad was a big part of his life. He was this male role model. That's my perceptions based on my internal library. But that's a fishing rod. It's not always the case. I mean, I could tell you so many stories, and specifically this was about a little lass that was adopted. One of the issues mum's hadn't long adopted her, and COVID hit. And so little one wouldn't go to school, and they were having attachment issues anyway because of the trauma and socialisation and all this. And arguably they are, but she wouldn't go to school. And the presumption from mum and dad was that it was the fear of the COVID and how it infects you and that it can make you poorly. So mum and dad went through this really long dialogue with her. She's only about 6 or 7, on the statistics versus age versus how healthy you are versus. And I said, did you actually ask her what specifically is bothering her about going to school? Obviously in 6-year-old language. And she went, well, we know it's because of, but did you actually ask? No. So I did. And she went, I don't want to go because of COVID. Mum went to see, I told you. I went, yeah, good. But then I said, what is it about COVID? Got to wear a mask. And Mum's like, see, I told you. What is it about the mask? I don't want to wear a blue one. I want a pink one.
All those assumptions we have.
Easy for me to do. I'm a therapist and that's what I'm trained to do. But a lot of the work that we do intervention and prevention. So obviously we step in and we help parents and children, and not just with the immediate issue. But I don't want anyone in therapy So we teach as we're going. So I'd point something simple like just ask what specifically, so you have to go inside rather than just give a bland statement. And we've said before, avoid the word why, but that's general for everybody. But
I've done this myself where you assume, and often I think it's the thing where we assume the worst. We assume the big thing it's going to be. And I've had this with my own daughter where I've seen negative things which I'm going, oh, that's not right. And I've made an assumption. And then sometimes without even asking my daughter, I've twigged I've got it completely wrong. Because I may have changed it to solve the problem and it hasn't worked. And it is a much smaller thing, or it's a different thing, or what I perceive as small is a very big barrier to them. But it's that, as you said, I'm an adult. I've got all my baggage with me that I'm carrying, and I'm applying that baggage to this child.
I think from my perspective, the kids that I get to meet that are in either foster situations or adoption more so, they're at the point where they found a family that are, desperate to be their parents and give them a better life and try and make their worlds okay. At the point that you adopt, and this is a generalisation because I haven't worked with every agency in the UK, obviously, they feel pretty well left to it. It's sort of certain funding stops, therapeutic intervention stops. So now all of a sudden they've got this child. They've been given a background about the child, etc., a little bit about what they may or may not have been through, and it's not always horrific, but they're on their own then. Now, as a therapist, it's hard for me to get to what is this child reacting to? What behaviours or beliefs have they created to protect them? I don't even need to know protect them from what, because I can't change that. But what are they doing now to help them get through their world? And can I give them an alternative? And what do they need to think or believe for that alternative to actually embed itself and trust? Now, I can do that because I've been trained to do it because I'm a therapist. If you think you're a brand new parent and you have no idea, you've been told a little bit about the child's background, maybe it wasn't so great. They may have even at this point had an assessment and have a diagnosis for being on the spectrum or whatever. That's another one, isn't it? Believe it
Yeah.
or not, we're not always informed of all of that before. But again, I'm not speaking for every agency out there. But I guess my real point is that these parents are then on their own with this child, and bringing up any child's difficult. But if you've had that 9 months of nurturing it in the womb, and then you biologically give birth to it, from the off, you know your child as best as any of us can. There's a big gap. So there's that bonding gap. There's that maternal gap, which, it's there, as you wouldn't be doing such a wonderful thing as adopting a child. But there's this big gap. And you don't know them. But what you do know, you've been told. And then you risk getting lost in the story. So little Adam, his parents were, for example, addicts, abuse. He saw this, he saw that, he saw other. That's his story. That's all you know. It's very, very hard to park that and just look at little Adam and, okay, so he's doing that because how's that helping him? I know how it's helping him then. How's it helping him now? And how can I adjust that behaviour because the situation's changed? And just say you're safe now. If you say it enough and you prove it to them over a period of time, of course it will work because he'll realise he is. But initially it's not going to, because it's mean a thing. I'm sure he's heard it a million times. Mummy loves it.
And they'll test it. They'll do lots of things like that to test. You say I'm safe, but what happens if I do this? I'll find out. Because it's going to go wrong and you're just lying to me. There's loads of, but it's interesting as you're talking, and it's I think when you become a parent, your child is born. I do literally remember coming home from hospital with my firstborn and putting her on the floor and then going, now what? I completely went, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And you're just sitting there going, kind of, you've built up to it. And also, when they're really young, they're not going to do much. You could literally put them in the most dangerous thing. As long as there's a circle with no danger, life's fine. Then you learn and you kind of make that house safe for them. And you learn how they are and you make all the adaptations as they go through the ages. And they get to the point where they're starting to follow rules. So you can be, okay, we can not have the stair gates anymore. You can remove those safety things because they've learned all the rules. And then slowly over the next however many years, your house comes back to normal, adulty, the way you want it, without all the toys everywhere or things like that. But to suddenly get a child at any age in the middle of that, and especially if you've not been a parent before, how do you know how to aim your house? How do you know to prepare your house? How do you know you're going to treat them like an adult, or you can baby? Oh, that's just a whole lot of confusion for me.
There's an awful lot of advice, and depending on the adoption support agency you're with, I'm lucky we work with some really, really good ones. There's a lot of advice and support about what to expect, how to manage certain situations. There doesn't seem to be as much on how to support yourself and your partner, and how inevitably having this new person in your home who has got these issues, whatever they might be, how it's going to affect you and your parenting skills and how you work together. And do you lose sight of? I see that a lot where adoptive parents lose sight of one another because it's so encompassing and focused on this child, which happens, I think, if you just have your own biological child, but more so if you've got a child that you know has been through hell, for example, or you presume it has, depending on the knowledge you're given. They become the center of your universe, which is fantastic. That's what we need. These kids need that. But if you lose you and you just become this textbook of, right, when they do this, I need to accept this because that's because of that. And you follow all these rules that are brilliant guidelines, but chaps, they are guidelines. They're guidelines to give you some information on what you're seeing, but they're not who your child is. So what do you do then? You've got to start trusting your gut a little bit more. And I think one of the biggest things that I see where parents are struggling, and they'll phone me and say, the adoption guys aren't there anymore. We're out on our own because we have adopted. So, I'm booking this appointment with you. His behaviours off the Richter. And I know that it's because of what he went through. And there's a classic story that will hopefully help you understand this. Her lovely lady, her and her husband wanted to adopt. They fostered for a while. And they finally got their little lad. And I've never seen two people so damn happy. And I couldn't have been happier for this kid because these guys are gorgeous. And if anyone was going to give this kid the chance he deserves. And they'd not long adopted. And they were putting up with all sorts of behaviours because obviously this child is testing the boundaries. Am I safe? Regardless of what you say. Is there definitely going to be food there tomorrow? Regardless of what you say. They can't trust that. Words aren't going to make them trust it. It's actions. And I remember she phoned me and said, Ali, I hate to say this, but I might have made a hell of a mistake. Like, come on, I've never seen you happier. And she went, I'm just getting nowhere with the behaviour. I said, what's he done now? Because it's a bit like that. And she said that she had a friend round who's also just recently adopted a little boy and had the same additional needs, as it turned out, as on the spectrum. And it thought it'd be really good to socialise her. So we'll call her son Adam again. I like the word Adam. Wasn't. So I said, so what happened? She said, well, I'm sat there with this lady. She's a very nice lady, drives a nice car, very posh, got it all together. Yeah. Presumption. And she said, she made me feel, I know she didn't mean to, but I got the best coffee service out because she was that kind of person. I went, okay, right. That's interesting. And I said, what happened? She said, well, the kids were playing beautifully. And then all of a sudden, she said, Adam just came running over, picked a coffee cup up, and the bone china from grandma threw it against the wall for no reason. I went, oh, ouch. And she went, I didn't know where to put myself because we're then being judged, aren't we? So I said, so what did you do? She said, I followed the rules, what I was told to do because of his past. I said, great, what did you do? And she said, I didn't raise my voice. Brilliant, that takes some doing. And it does, yeah?
It does.
She said, I just gave him a hug when he was ready, and I pointed out that, that's not the kind of thing that we do, but I still love you. She said, I did all that, confirming stuff. But brilliant, then what'd you do? And she said, then I took him out and we had a McDonald's and I brought him a really big Lego set because he loves Lego. I went, that's cool. And she went, do you think I did right? And I went, I can't tell you. I'm not you and only you will know. But I said, I'll come and have a chat if you want. I'll come tomorrow. But when I come, I love coffee in China. Can you get the best set out again? Do you mind? And she went, no, of course not, Ali. I said, but I have to warn you, I'm going to pick the whole damn service up and smash it against the wall. And she went, why would you do that? I said, well, I need a new car. It took her a minute to think about it.
Knew that was coming.
All of us need boundaries. And yes, there needs to be a little bit of give and take and a little bit of understanding, certainly if we're dealing with any child that's been through any trauma. But boundaries are the thing that makes us safe. And arguably, you know, whether mum and dad were drug addicts or they were abused, the boundaries weren't there. If we had boundaries, we're safe. So one of the most important things to do is to be constant and have those boundaries. You're not being cruel, but she was actually advised to give him more rope because of what he'd been through. Again, everyone's individual. I would kind of say be understanding. So, you know, don't take it so personally and understand that he's not a bad kid. It's because, absolutely, bear that in mind. That's a fishing rod. But if you give him more rope, then he hasn't got boundaries. And if he hasn't got boundaries, he won't feel safe. This is what we do. This is it. I still love you, but that's the cutoff, son. But I still love you, but that's the cutoff. And keep it constant, because the one thing that makes us feel safe, if we're going to use the word you're safe now, is when something that is safe doesn't change, doesn't alter. No matter how hard we kick it to test it, it doesn't alter. That's safe. And getting parents to understand and see that in specific context to their child, that's been one of the most helpful things, I hope. It is from feedback from the families that we're working with, that they dare to not give them rope and they dare to put a boundary in, even though they're being advised sometimes to let things slide because. It's recognizing what it's okay to let slide because, but also recognizing that the thing that all of us need is to feel safe. And that safety is from knowing the rules, knowing the boundaries, and knowing we're loved. If everything keeps changing.
In my head, I'm hearing you talk and imagining almost like what the rules and guidance say is you basically want a vacant space for them to exist in so that nothing can trigger them, nothing can push them, nothing challenges them, and everything's going to be fine.
No chance.
But
because you won't know what it is. It's certainly, if you think about the little ones, certainly, I was going to say teenagers, but no, they go back into not talking. But even if you've got a child that's capable of communication at a reasonable level, they probably cannot tell you what's triggering them. They can't tell you that loud voice makes them feel this and that. We could probably work that one out, yeah, because they've heard a lot of shouting and screaming. But it might just be a loud voice with a certain accent. It might be a certain smell, alcohol, or that triggers them. We can't know. We can know the scenario and the situation, but we can't know what the trigger is and what it is that brings back into that child's mind that trauma, which brings fear because they relate to that as being threatened or frightened in some way. We can't know what that is. So I don't know how you make a safe space for them. What you need to do is watch and recognize and say, oh, that was interesting. You just got upset then. I'm sorry. You're safe. I love you. I'm here. Boundaries. Was it Daddy's voice or was it?
Yeah, because the thing is, as you said, you grow to learn what they need over time, and you grow and learn how you are around them. But yeah, suddenly having an unknown and how you are supposed to be around them and what you should or shouldn't be doing. And there's probably no guidance around any of that. I mean, in my head, you'd probably pause your life. Because I think it's a bit, my limit is somebody had like 6 months off work because they were adopting a child. So it's kind of like, is that 6 months? Have you paused your life to devote 6 months to that child? Or did you live your life and kind of integrate them into your life to go, right, this is me, and we're going to find a new balance. Yeah, it's just really interesting.
I don't think, and we could talk for years on this, and we still would not come up with a 10-point, this is what you do with any child, let alone a child that's been through trauma. But again, a lot of focus is on the child, and the support, I believe, needs to be more so for these parents, because it really does affect you. All of you've gone from maybe not having children as just a pair of you in your dreams to have children for whatever reason you can't, maybe just a lovely person you want to give someone a home. You've suddenly got this new little person without that maternal connection, which is interesting because, and you hear this all the time where some parents have a problem if, they get with a partner's already got kids. They do connect. It's not the same. It can cause problems. Sometimes it doesn't. But it's the parents trying to work out who they need to be for this child. And in doing so, they completely change who they are.
Yeah.
It's like, well, my child has. I'll give you another story. Stories are the best ones. Lovely one, amazing. In all my therapy career now, I've never being asked to work with family or child and gone, no chance, apart from once. And I must admit, within a couple of sessions, I thought, no chance. This kid was off the Richter. And mum and dad were really, really struggling with not a lot of support. They basically they weren't giving me. I think they found me in the end, and then they were giving me, which was lucky for me. But I really thought we're not going to get through to this one because he absolutely controlled the roost. Now, he wasn't born controlling the roost, and you could, experts were saying, well, it's because of his various diagnoses. He has to be in control. He doesn't like changes. These are things that aren't going to move, right? This is who he is. Deal with it. And he was and their life was hell. They were on eggshells, and there was no rhyme or reason with this child. It really was off the Richter, and there was nothing. You just couldn't get through because he worked out all he's got to do is push. So if you say no and put him on the naughty step, for example, he'd, I don't know, throw a brick through the window. If you didn't react to him throwing a brick through the window, he'd put one through your car and set light to the front room. Not that bad, but you know what I'm saying? He'd just escalate.
Yep. Until the boundary was there, he was going to keep pushing.
Yeah. And the boundary wasn't right or wrong. The boundary was mum and dad's reaction to it, as it turned out. So it wasn't a case of no bricks in the front room, right? It was mum and dad's reaction to it that really mattered. And the classic one, it was, well, we know, and I started to hear this quite regularly. We started to move through his different behaviours and look at what's that about, how's it helping him, what's he achieving. It's helping him because of what he's been through. It's a defence thing. It's actually helping him now because it's allowing him to rule the roost. So rather than get crossed he's ruling the roost, stand back. Why does he need to? Control. Why does he need to be in control? He didn't feel in control. How can we give him control that's relevant and in respect to his age and his capabilities, so that he's got that sense of control without needing to. So it was looking at each individual behaviour, looking at why it might have been created in the first place, the protection thing, and how it's helping now and what we can adjust. One of the things that came up, because on the spectrum, he doesn't like change. So that every time, even up until recently, and they've done, I can't praise these parents enough, how they stuck with it, or me, I don't know, but we got there, and they've now got the little boy and he's got the parents they want, and it's beautiful. Very proud. But there was a big problem over this word change, because he's on the spectrum, doesn't do change. So the word change, so think changed at school or a planned change, mum and dad freaked. Even though they tried really hard not to, because we've done some work around their reaction causes a reaction. But he picked up that word freaked. And it did freak him. He doesn't like change. He likes to know. But I think also he was very much picking up on them going, oh my God, there's going to be change. He's going to kick off. Oh, I'm going to kick off then because it's change. And that was going on. And it was a really simple thing. And what we did was we just thought outside the box, specific to this little fella. He loves crime, drama programs, things like that. He likes problem solving. He likes jigsaw puzzles. Who knew? And what we did was I suggested to mum and dad that they organise some low-key stuff, like we're going to go to the shop. We're leaving at 8:30. He needed to know that detail because he was on the spectrum. And they said, oh, Christ, no, if anything changes, we're all hell will break loose. And they're bracing themselves, and he picks up on that, doesn't he? Then he also worked out to a point that change means I can get my own way and they'll buy me more Lego, so I behave. So there's a little bit of that going in there. In fact, parents, that's an interesting one. If you notice that the behaviour is around you and maybe not anywhere else, I know parents will say, well, no, they control it because they didn't want to do it at school. There is a part of that. But there's also a part of either you can control it or you can't. And that's a useful thing to notice because you can work on it. So we got them to set up some scenarios. We're going to go to shops. We're leaving at 8:30. The drive's 10 minutes. We're going to go to this shop. We're going to buy that. He's happy with that. He knows what's going on. And we then created what I call a pattern interrupt. So the word change. So, for example, if something had happened and Dad had been called to work because he's on call, halfway through that, it would be, oh, change your plans. Bang! The trigger was change. And the fact that something was different, but it was the word as well. So we came up with this thing called plot change. So not change. Sorry, we lost the word change. It was, I forget, plot twist. So mum and dad stopped using the word change and used plot twist. But what they did initially was they created scenarios where there was a plot twist, but it had a really positive outcome. And what gradually began to happen, because we're talking about putting boundaries in and teaching this young fella that this is safe rather than just saying it, is he worked out that actually plot twists were quite good fun because they usually meant something very positive. Then they moved it on to plot twist, but rather than them coming up with the positive of they're going to have a McDonald's, they'd come up with 2 or 3 scenarios. So one of them's have a McDonald's, one of them's go home, have his favourite pancakes, and the other one was we'll just buy something nice at the shop and have it later. So it's still positive, but they were slightly different. And he had to choose. So then we started to get him to not freak out at a plot twist, but also to see that, there's choices and options, and they're not all great. Some of them are better than others, but let's start to choose between us which one's better. And we got him over this word change. But if the parents hadn't have had the support of a therapist or someone like me, they'd still be having absolute meltdowns left, right, and centre every time that word was mentioned. So it's that kind of support that I think parents that adopted, well, all parents need, but certainly parents of adopted kids, because they're in a minefield. They're terrified of getting it wrong because of the potential past.
And you can't have someone going, so what were they like when they were 2? You've got all that backstory you're missing out on, and you're literally, it's almost like having a jigsaw without the box. You haven't got the picture. You can't put it all together just by going, oh, I know this goes up here. There'll be this up here. I'll stick all those pieces up there. You don't know. You've kind of got to put it together.
Scary, but I'm all about reframing things, because it's not what happens that affects us, it's the emotion we attach to it.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd reframe that and say, well, yeah, you're right. You haven't had them from Dot. There is a chunk of your jigsaw missing. You haven't got a picture. But I'd also very gently point out that if you did have a picture and you've had them from Dot, you have now got this picture and it's not going to change. This is who your child is. Well, we do change and we do grow. So maybe it's kind of cool. So it's just the emotion you attach to the problem in front of you. And again, we're specifically talking foster and adoption here, but that's across the board. But more so with foster and adoption. You need to check yourself as parents. Why have I just reacted that way? Why am I on eggshells right now? Why is the way my husband's managing this against how I am annoying me? Sort that out. I call it putting your oxygen mask on first. And whenever I'm asked to work with a family of adopted kids, I don't start with a kid. I can't change their past. Christ, I wish I could. I can't. But what I've got to do is help to create an environment that will get them to understand what safe is, other than just a word. And for the parents to get out of it what they wanted, which is to actually enjoy having a loving family rather than to take on this that's always going to be hell and it's always going to be awful. No, it's not. Because at the end of the day, it's just a kid. It's just a child.
I think one of the things which really helped me, I think when you're thinking about having kids, or especially like when your siblings have kids and you're getting into the whole kids world and it's coming, it's a tsunami coming to get you. It is a positive thing,
Really
honest.
positive parenting, yeah.
Very positive parenting there. I wasn't scared at all. But you watch the Super Nanny, and one thing I remember watching with Super Nanny is generally it was either never the kids or the majority of the work went into the parents with some tweaking with the children. And it was that sort of thing that I sat there and went, if my kids are little bleeps, that's me.
You see, this is a fine line, because I'd absolutely agree. The majority of the work that I do with adopted parents, foster parents and families is my choice because of my approach to therapy with the parents, but not because they're doing it wrong.
No.
It's to give them alternatives because they've never been given those alternatives. And this isn't in a book. This isn't A, B, C, D. And I think the problem is that it's, and Super Nanny's right. She puts boundaries in. She stands her ground. She doesn't have that emotional connection. But I think what's missing from that program, which would be really, really helpful, is to actually point out that, I've watched it and gone, why are you letting your kid do that? For God's sake, she did it. But the truth is, there's a reason behind that. And it comes down to the same thing. What is it about you as an individual that is allowing the child to do that, or treading on eggshells around them, or letting that slide, or getting really angry? It's important, therefore, I think, to work with what I call the whole environment. So I'd work with mum and dad before I even went near the child, just to see how it's affecting them, how they're reacting. Because regardless of your backstory, You react to your environment. You have that backstory because you've reacted to an environment. We're doing it all of our lives. Even if it's a new environment, the foster adoptive parents is a safe place, it's a new environment and the child's going to react to it. So they might react nicely to the fact they've got regular meals, they're clean, they're safe, they've got a nice comfy bed and no one's going to hurt them. But they're also reacting to mum and dad and how they're reacting. And kids can smell fear. They can smell anxiety no matter what great mask you put on. So the bulk of the work I do is not fixing mum and dad. They're not doing a bad job. You know, God love them. They're giving kids a chance, and I couldn't put them on a higher pedestal. But to actually let them exist as well and give them a space to actually say, well, if I'm honest, I'm struggling with this and this is why, or I don't know how to control my emotions here. This makes me a bad person. And they start to self-doubt. The moment they do that, then potentially that adoption or certainly the foster placement is going to fall down. And 9 times out of 10, certainly the work I do, it falls down. You know, the kid's off the Richter, it will fall down. But 9 times out of 10, it falls down because mum and dad aren't given the skills, the tools to recognise what's going on, how they're reacting, and the consequence of that. It's skittles. They're not doing anything wrong. They're being human, but they're beating themselves up for it.
If yeah, you got to think about it, when you become a parent, your tool set that you rely on the most is your own personal experience when you were a child. So you look at what your parents did when I did that, they shouted at me. So that's what I'm going to do. And unless you've literally had that experience, and I don't just mean seeing your friends with their kids on a day out, you need to be like properly with them for a week or two to really see the whole picture, to go, oh, okay, that does work. You can't just grab. That's the thing. You got to think about that tool set comes from your childhood, but it's your child's perspective of that adult decision. But you've now assumed that, that's interesting.
But it does in every aspect. So again, part foster and adoption, it's in every child. I've got 2 sisters. They've got kids. I don't. It's interesting. I'm a child therapist, but maybe that's why I'm one. And I watch how they both parent, and in relation, because obviously this stuff fascinates me, in relation to how my parents parented us, and they've both completely done the opposite of what my mum and dad did, which, no offence, arguably good, but they've gone in opposite directions. So, for example, if we're talking about education, I don't think mum could tell you or ever went to a parents' night. It wasn't something that was important in my family. So one sister has gone out of the way, sort of extracurricular activities, push, get the child the highest education possible and really be involved in it. My other sister is like, no, I'm not putting that pressure on. So she's gone the other way. Both sets of kids turned out brilliantly because kids will do what they want and they'll just be who they are. But there's that, you know, this is, if you're looking at your own parents to how to parent, unless, again, you're really lucky and you feel really balanced and level, it's back to what we said in a previous podcast. Look outside, watch what everyone else is doing. That is useful information, but it's not necessarily the train you should be getting on. Lots of choices, yeah? Take it, evaluate it, choose one.
The phrase I say to my daughters is, I don't know how to parent, I just know how not to parent. That's a bit, as you said, there's this thing you have, but there are so many other options you could choose. And I'm just learning, and I'm really lucky I get to talk to people like you, Ali, and loads of people who give me lots of pointers and lots of bits, and I'm really reflective. And those your 2 sisters who do it their own way, I bet you with both of them, the big thing is they are in their children's lives. They are interested and invested.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. That's of everything. Doesn't matter if you're pushing or you're this or you're this. You're in their lives. And that's the bit that makes that child feel valued.
Does
which
it?
Makes them... Okay, not in the...
It's a minefield, isn't it? Because that's an assumption. So I will only feel valued if I do really, really well educationally because that's important to mum and dad. What if I struggle with it? It's a hell of a pressure.
That's why valued is really... I mean, it's connected. It's valued. Is that really... And there's so many things you see on TV where the parent is using their child, is trying to give the child the childhood they wish they had. And so your parenting style is not about your child, it's about you.
and if you take that to its full extent, and again, I'm no expert, I'm just Ali, and I work with what's in front of me. But if you have a child from the start, maybe you do that a bit, and you want to give them the childhood and the life that you would like them to have from your perception of what would be a good life, which is a lovely thing. And I think we all do that. We want the best for our kids. But you can't do that with a foster or an adopted child because you don't have that backstory. And I think that's kind of healthy in a funny sort of way because it does make you have to go, well, hang on a minute, what do they want? What do they need? Rather than what I presume or perceive they need. If you can move away from the textbook of, well, they're diagnosed with this, they've been through this trauma, therefore they will behave. We are not damn tick boxes. Parents are not given the training and support that, seriously, if they were just given some of the stuff we put our students through, parenting would be a lot more fun. But adoptive and foster parents, it's eggshells because they so want to get it right because of the need to have a family, the need to be good parents. Well, I don't know what their needs are. That's the point. All of us, behaviour serves a purpose. What is the purpose of fostering adoption? What's that about? What do they want for this child and why? What's that about? And standing back from that and going, that's all lovely. And most of the time it is, and you won't go far wrong. But what do they actually need right now?
It's literally one of the things my kids do is they'll moan about something and they'll look at one of us and go, that's your fault.
Respect, clever. You
bad eyesight, that sort of thing. Good at maths, bad eyesight, bad at drawing. Well, it's one of our faults, yeah? When you're your children, you know that's there. And you going, I've got your eyesight, or I've got this, oh, that's your fault. And it's a thing, but which also means that when your kids look at you, they'll go, I'll probably end up like them. And that's one of our first podcasts is the tunnel you make for yourself, is you look at that external thing.
Yeah.
But I suppose that's what's really exciting with the adoption is...
So I mean, to a point, there's a bit more freedom, isn't it? Because I'm not going to turn out like you because we're genetically connected. I might take on some of your traits, your beliefs, your values, which wouldn't be a bad thing. But ultimately, I'm a little independent human, unique. I think that's kind of cool.
It is, because they're literally going to go in any direction they want.
Yeah.
Because they haven't got a set path to follow.
No, nothing to live up to.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they do. Foster adopted or otherwise, if you love your parents and you're inspired by them, you're going to want to be like dad or mum. Of course you are. That's a lovely thing.
And even though I say to my kids, look, whatever you want, I'll be happy. I can see they're following a kind of path which is kind of linked to me in some way. And you literally go, no matter how independent I say you will be and how many of you are, it's there underneath, subconsciously, there's something.
But isn't it really lovely when you can do that, whether you verbalise it or not, and you go, they are like me. Like that, it's that connection. But again, foster adoption parents can't do that. Not in the same way. So there's not that connection. So it's an interesting thing of being able to stand back and not presume that just because they've now got a child, they are a parent in the context of how we all understand it. It's different. It's different. I think it's beautifully, uniquely different. I think when parents looking for a child and the child looking for parents find one another, I think that's, if there's a universe in heaven, I think that's what's happening. But it is different. And I think you need to be able to recognise that and allow parents, they don't necessarily get the limelight or the voice in these situations to actually say, I'm struggling. Is it wrong to say I don't have this connection? No. It's who you are. It's what's going on. What's that about? But that guilt of, I'm not doing a good enough job. I'm not really their dad. No wonder I haven't got that connection. There's all these fears in there as well. We forget just because you've taken on the title of parent, you're still an individual with your own hopes, fears and hang-ups. And if they're not allowed to be discussed and to look at how they are affecting, shaping any scenario, then I think you lose a part of yourself. And I think that's a real shame.
I always think perhaps when you're adopting a fostering is my children love me because I made them and they've been there in my entire life and that's all they've ever known. That's why they love me, because it's just natural and it's the way it is.
That works for you, Dale.
Yeah. I'm amazing.
There's a blood thicker and water thing for sure. It's, it's odd.
But if you have that person who adopted and you do have that connection, but if you can get that connection, that is to me, that's thicker than the blood.
I personally, and I try and keep personal out of it because that's me presuming and not using fishing rods. I kind of agree because I've gone out of my way to find you. You know, you're not an accident. You weren't planned. I've come looking for you. You. I
Yeah,
think that's kind of beautiful.
it is. There is something.
I
It
do a lot of
really.
work around that with kids that, you know, when I, you know, and they just the ones that came and got me. No, mate. No, mate. It's reframing. Do you know how many children they met before they told me they'd found you? Because you've got to try and find a way, reframe the fact that there isn't that biological bond, but there's a more powerful, beautiful one. This is quite magical. They found you.
It is. It really, because once you have that connection, you're literally going. It's almost like I'm going to say we weren't meant to be here or that, but it is. But you did find each other, and
Yeah.
you have completely formed that bond from nowhere. That is actually really powerful when you get that right.
I think it's beautiful, but it's again easy for me because I could say that, I could see that, and I could verbalize it to mum, dad, or the child, and reframing stuff, looking at it from a different angle, I can do because I'm not emotionally involved and I'm in almost third position, so I can do that. When you're in the heat of it, you want to get it right for this kid. In your head, you've got the story of they've been through all this. I need to be a super parent to make this okay. No, you need to be a parent. One of the greatest compliments, I did do all sorts of training courses and what have you. And we did one for a load of parents that are either fostering or about to adopt. And this lovely lady came up at the end, and all the way through it, she was like looking at me, making me feel, I mind read, that I'm talking rubbish and didn't have a clue. And I thought, okay. And she came up at the end, and I kind of gulped when she said, "Can I have a word?" And she said, "That was interesting." I went, "Oh, good." And she said, "The thing that I'm going to take away from this is you've just done a seminar on not how to parent, because if you had done, I would have walked out because I don't think that seminar exists. She's said, you've just done a seminar on how to stop yourself not parenting." And I had to go away and think about that. And I thought that was beautiful because what I'd actually done, according to her, what she'd taken from it, was given her permission to be and to trust herself and be what that child needed and what she needed, rather than what was expected and written down in a book somewhere. And she said that she was blocking herself from parenting, from trying too hard to parent, according to whatever she was balancing that on. I thought that was just beautiful. And if I did that, then great. For everyone, I don't know. But
But
it's such an individual thing. But again, I just, if adoption companies are listening, I know you're all doing your best. And as I said, we're privileged to work with some lovely ones. But give the parents some more tools, because
that's
they're not just adoptive parents. They're human beings with hopes, dreams, desires, fears. And they're in a relationship already. And the third person coming into that's going to affect it. Be aware of all of the ripples that a child coming into their home, into their world, could create.
the kids want that connection. They want that belonging, and they want all of that.
Yeah.
But everything they've been through will tell them you're not worthy, or it's not going to happen, or things like that. So they're going to test it all the way.
They're going to have trust issues. So if they sniff that anything about you isn't real,
Yep.
that's, even if they can't explain that, they can't communicate that, their sixth sense is going to go, something's not right here. And it could be as simple as, I'm very real. You're here because I love you. I want to be the best parent I can be. And I'm reading this book and it's telling me how. That's you not being real. You being real is, I'm just going to do this and let's give it a go.
And I suppose, just to simplify it down to a really stupid kind of analogy, is they are literally fighting to get away from you just to test if you're going to let go.
Sometimes, not all the time.
But that sort of thing is when they're fighting to get away from you, then they kind of, a lot of the time it's that, are those boundaries there? Are you going to give up on me? Are you going to let me go and I'll go back to the system? It's that in my head, a lot of those challenges at that. And although it seems they're trying to get away from you, it's that final, like when you buy a car and you take it for a really fast test drive and go around the corner really fast. Yes, this is the what. It's in my head, and I'm really simplifying this down in a really complicated process too.
Yeah.
okay, I've fought everything I can, and I've turned around, and they're still holding on to me tight. I know I'm going to get in trouble for that, but I know although I'm going to get in trouble, they're doing it because they want me and they want to protect me. That's the sort of thing you're fighting through all of that, and that's when that connection's kind of formed. I know simplifying that to a lovely simple thing has completely ignored all the emotions in that, which are going to be hugely complicated.
It is. It's a minefield, and if we're making this feel simplistic, believe me, I believe it's not. But I absolutely work on everybody that I work with is so individual and unique. So I have no damn idea till I've spent some time. I remember a classic. This family they were fostering, and they fostered this little boy who's about 8, and his little sister who was 6. And this was their 3rd or 4th placement, and none of the parents could cope or deal with it because of the little boy's behaviour mainly. What he was doing was stealing money and food, and the therapist that they were working with at the time said, "Oh, this is a standard behaviour. He's testing the boundaries. If he keeps stealing, will you still love him?" And they worked on that theory that it was an attachment issue. So rather than put fishing rods out and test, it was no, it's definitely this, and that's what they worked on. And his 2 kids went from foster home to foster home to foster home. Finally, I got to meet them, which was lovely. And he was still stealing. He was stealing food and money. And, my fishing rod's out there because, yes, it's an obvious one. He's testing the boundaries. If I do this, will you still love me? So he was testing, am I safe, as you've just said. But I thought, okay, now I'm going to put a couple more fishing rods out because I don't know that to be true. And someone else has worked on that and we've not got anywhere. Long story short, too late, Ali. It turned out when I actually got the trust of this little fella that he gave me a little bit of his backstory without giving me his backstory, just from the way I questioned him through play without him realizing I was actually interrogating him. When he was with his biological parents, they went days sometimes without food. And they didn't have the money for his little sister to have a coat. So he took his little sister from the house. They ran away. His little sister didn't have a coat. So ever since then, wherever he is, regardless of everyone saying you're safe, you're safe, you're safe, because outwardly, apparently his parents looked like model parents. It was quite a big one that actually somebody picked up on the fact there's something not right here. They look model. So nobody was watching his kids or listening. What he was doing was he was taking food and he was hiding it. So his little sister was never bloody hungry. I know, it broke me. And he was taking money, not to PlayStation, drugs, so that if he needed to buy a coat for his sister, he could. He was a baby himself, for Christ's sakes. So he had, regardless of how lovely the foster parents were, he could not. It wasn't just about him. He had to protect his little sister. So there's a whole other level there, which explained why no matter what anyone did, his behaviour wasn't changing. It wasn't just about him. There was another level. And if I hadn't have had the fishing rods out and picked up on the fact that this is something to do with his little sister, not just him.
And I suppose until his little sister, she felt safe, he would never feel safe.
But he'd given up on himself ever being safe. His job was to protect her, which at that young age was huge. So nothing mum and dad could say would convince his kid that his little sister was safe. It was never about him, and yet that's what the focus was. The moment that we worked on his little sister is safe. And it was very, very simple. Mum put a fridge in his room, and when they went shopping, they got extra food, and the fridge only he could open had a little key. And Mum gave him money so that he could save it up. And that went on for a few months until he realised, and she noticed, that he wasn't asking for things for the fridge and he wasn't taking money, because he realised she was going to be okay here. It made it about him. For someone so young, trauma, bloody hell. We can't get lost in the story. We've got a completely open mind to what these kids have been through. And it's not always traumatic. But look at the behaviours. The behaviours serving a purpose and it's trying to protect them, whether it's some kicking off or behaviours like stealing, hiding, wetting the bed. There's a purpose. Understand that purpose and how it's helping them, because at some point it did. Now it's causing problems. And then help.
An idea of putting a fridge and buying food to put in that fridge in a kid's room, literally my thing's going, if I did that with my kids and it was like biscuits or something, I reckon an hour later it would be gone. So everything tells me you would never do that. Yeah, you would never trust them. You'd never do that. But it's a very different...
But it built the trust up. Because finally this little lad realised that these people understood. He couldn't articulate that, but the fridge with the key that only he could open So there was food there for his sister. He couldn't have a grown-up conversation like I am with you about that. He just knew he had to do it. And the moment they gave him that, that was him feeling safe. Not you are safe. Here's your nice bedroom. It was a bloody fridge. Can a parent
Yeah.
do that? Some can. That's why it's kind of cool to have someone externally just to go, hang on a minute, what's this really about? Because it's not ticking any of the boxes in my book of trauma relation.
So hands up, who had the fridge in the bedroom as the card to fix everything? No one. Because that is just so unique to that situation, which is everything you've been saying.
Who would change the word change to plot twist? It's looking, and I think, sometimes I feel myself apologising because I'm not the professional run-of-the-mill tick box therapist. But you know what? I never blooming well want to be, because it allows me to put the fishing rods out, test them, and say, that's interesting. That's the bit that's causing the problem. How can we change it?
What I find is, and if I do insult anyone with this, is those air quote experts who do that sort of a thing. What I find is they found a 10-step process which works for them. And they often only choose a situation where that 10-step process works to reaffirm that process works for them.
I think the problem is, and to be fair to them, nobody gets into our kind of work unless they've got huge hearts and lots of empathy and want to correct things. So they know, But I think if you look at therapies available generally in the UK, CBT, for example, cognitive behavioural therapy, is tried and tested. So if we're looking at the masses, I don't think any professionals would say this is perfect for everyone. Not hand on heart. You might have a couple of diehards that love it, but by and large, no. But because it has to be for the masses, we have to come up with something that will work 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10. And I guess I'm really lucky because I'm doing the work I want to do. I work with the 3 it didn't work for.
Yeah. Love it. Ali, once again, thank you for coming on the show today.
No worries. I enjoy your company, Dale. You make me think too, which is always a good thing. Make me a better person.
I'm going to stick that on the wall, that quote, up nice and big lettering. So I'm going to just summarise this. Basically, what we've learned is there are no rules. Take everything as you see it, not as you're told. So don't make those assumptions. Don't fall into this is why he's upset. This is what triggers him. Find out for yourself and build that relationship with them. That's what I'm going to summarize it down to. There is no real useful list of things to go and do apart from it's going to take time and react to what you're seeing, not what you're told.
And back yourself.
Yeah.
There's no chance in life, in my current opinion, right? So I stand by how magical it is when you find that child and they find you. That's no coincidence. And you could say, oh, well, I was the only one available at the right age. No, rubbish. Time, space. That's my belief. Okay? It's a personal thing.
Yeah.
And if I'm anywhere near right on that, and I could be completely wrong, but back yourself, because if you were meant to be that child's parent, you were meant to parent them.
And it might not be the perfect choice, but it might be that sort of thing that actually they weren't the right choice. You might not be that perfect match, but more like you needed each other.
Absolutely agree.
So it's either a perfect match or actually you didn't where you want to be, but this challenge which you were given got you to where you want to. However you line it up.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, and I think that's across the board, whether it's biological child or otherwise. If we're just talking about parenting and childbirth, I think if your mind's open, we learn from one another. It's got nothing to do with age.
Definitely. I remember saying to a colleague I work with, you can learn from everyone. You might learn what not to do from group people, but you're still learning.
No failure, any feedback.
Yes. So again, Ali's given me some links. So I'm going to put those in the show notes, and I'll be sharing Ali's contact details so you can find out all about Ollie and his superpowers. And as always, wherever you're listening, you're going to find those show notes, or you can go to the Zencast website and find those show notes too. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Wherever you're listening, there's generally a subscribe button, or if you just go to the website each week, you can subscribe, but you can sign up for our newsletter to be told when there's new episodes, when to come back to that website and listen to the latest episode. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics, or anything else, please send an email to hello@thezencast.com. And as always, Zencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. We are here to help show the small steps of progress pupils with SEND make. We have a wide range of frameworks to suit different abilities and ages, but do you know about our Autism Progress? This is a framework for helping schools to profile a pupil's autism and how it impacts them. It's based on CERTs, it looks at communication, social interaction, emotional regulation, and flexible thinking. And Autism Progress also includes a wide range of strategies to help support those pupils. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our products and Autism Progress. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It is goodbye from me.
And goodbye. Take care. Back yourselves from me.
Definitely. Bye.